There's something strangely difficult about doing something good and telling no one. Try it sometime. Help someone. And don't mention it later. Finish a piece of work you're genuinely proud of and resist the urge to show it to anyone. Spend a few months getting your life back in order without announcing that you're on some kind of journey. It sounds easy. It isn't. Most of us have become so used to being watched, or at least imagining that we're being watched, that even private improvement can feel unfinished until somebody notices. You read a good book, and part of you wants to share the cover. You go somewhere beautiful and reach for your phone before you've really looked at the place. You finally become disciplined about something, and almost immediately, you want to tell people that you've become disciplined. That's human. There's no reason to pretend otherwise. But Taoist philosophy asks a slightly uncomfortable question. What happens when you no longer need people to know? Not when you hide. Not when you become antisocial. Just when the need to be recognized begins to loosen its grip on you. That is where things get interesting, because some of the wisest figures in Taoist thought seem to have very little interest in being seen at all. There's a famous passage in chapter 17 of the Tao Te Ching about leadership. The best ruler, Lao Tzu says, is the one people hardly know exists. Think about that for a moment. Today, leadership is usually associated with visibility. You're supposed to have presence, a recognizable voice, a strong identity, maybe even a personal brand. People should know what you built, what you achieved, what you believe, what you stand for. If you lead a successful project, your name should probably be attached to it. Lao Tzu gives us almost the opposite image. The work gets done. People grow. Things function. And the leader doesn't stand in the middle of everything, saying, "Look what I did." When the work is finished, the people say, "We did it ourselves." That tells us something important about the Taoist idea of power. Real influence doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who doesn't need everyone to know that they're strong. The Tao Te Ching emerged in ancient China, with versions of the text circulating during the Warring States period. Tradition connects it with Lao Tzu, although scholars generally believe the text developed over time, rather than appearing all at once, from one clearly identifiable author. But whatever its exact origin, the book keeps returning to the same strange reversal. What looks weak may actually be strong. What stays low may endure. What does not compete may be difficult to defeat. And what does not insist on being seen may have the deepest influence of all. Now, there's something important to clear up. There is nothing wrong with being visible. Taoism is not telling you to delete every social media account, reject success, move into the mountains, and become mysteriously unavailable. You can be famous and still be inwardly free, and you can be completely unknown while spending your whole life worrying about what other people think. Visibility is not the problem. Dependence on visibility is. That difference matters. Imagine someone giving a speech to 1,000 people. They speak clearly. They enjoy the moment. People applaud. Then they go home, make dinner, and get on with their evening. Now imagine someone else, sitting alone in their kitchen, replaying a conversation from 3 days ago. Did I sound stupid? Why didn't they react more strongly? Do they respect me? Should I have said something different? The first person was seen by 1,000 people. The second person is completely alone. And yet, the second person may be far more trapped by an audience, because the audience is still there. It's just inside their head. Most of us know this feeling. You say something at work, and later wonder how it sounded. You buy something, and wonder what it says about you. You hesitate to admit that you've changed your mind, because people already know you. As the person who believes a certain thing, little by little, you begin protecting a version of yourself, and maintaining that version takes energy, a lot of energy. In chapter 66 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu gives us another image. Why do rivers and seas receive the water of hundreds of valleys? Because they lie below them. That's all. They are lower. And because they are lower, everything flows toward them. It sounds almost too simple, until you sit with it. Most of us are trained to move in exactly the opposite direction. Up, higher status, higher position, more influence, more recognition, a larger audience, a better title. There is always another wrong. Lao Tzu keeps pointing downward. Water goes low. The sage steps back. The good leader doesn't make everyone feel the weight of his authority. There is strength in not having to occupy the highest place. That doesn't mean becoming timid. It means you no longer have to fight every battle that touches your pride. Someone underestimates you? Fine. Someone else gets the credit? Maybe you correct it. If it matters. Maybe you don't. If it doesn't. Someone dislikes you? That's unpleasant. But it doesn't have to become an emergency. This is where refusing to be seen starts to look less like modesty and more like freedom. Praise feels good. Of course it does. But if you desperately need praise, it becomes a handle other people can grab. And the same is true of criticism. If a compliment can lift you 3 feet off the ground, an insult can usually knock you down just as far. The problem isn't enjoying approval. The problem is building your home inside it. Zhuangzi takes this idea somewhere even stranger. In the Zhuangzi, we repeatedly meet trees that are considered useless. Their trunks are crooked. Their branches are awkward. The wood is no good for lumber. Carpenters look at them and move on. Nobody wants them. And that is exactly why they survive. Other trees are cut down because they are useful. The useless tree gets to become old. It spreads its branches. It gives shade. It keeps being a tree. Zhuangzi loved stories like this because they disturb the categories we take for granted. Useful, useless, successful, unsuccessful, important, unimportant. We normally assume that becoming more useful always makes life better. Often, it does. But usefulness has a hidden cost. Once people discover what you're good at, they start wanting more of it. If you're the dependable person in your family, every emergency somehow finds your phone number. If you're the competent employee, you become the person who gets handed the mess nobody else can solve. If you're known as the intelligent one, saying, "I don't know," starts to feel strangely threatening. If you're successful, one ordinary bad year can feel like a public failure. The strength itself isn't the prison. The identity around it is. You become afraid of falling out of character. And I think this is one of Zhuangzi's most uncomfortable lessons. Sometimes, we spend years trying to become somebody, and then we spend even more years defending that somebody. So what does any of this look like? In ordinary modern life, imagine your life has become a little messy. Nothing dramatic. You're sleeping later than you want. Your attention is scattered. You pick up your phone every 10 minutes. You keep putting off exercise. The work gets done, but badly. You don't feel terrible. You just don't feel quite like yourself. So you decide to change a few things. There are 2 ways this can go. The first one is familiar. Monday morning. New routine. You download an app. You make a schedule. You take a photograph of your desk. Maybe you post something about getting your life together. You tell a friend. You're going to wake up at 6 every morning. You buy a new notebook, possibly a new water bottle. Nothing is wrong with any of this. But now, you have two jobs. The first job is changing your life. The second job is being the person who is changing their life. And the second job can become surprisingly exhausting. So imagine doing it differently. No announcement, no challenge, no before and after post. For 1 month, you simply change a few things. Your phone charges outside the bedroom. You wake up around 7. You walk for 20 minutes. Before opening social media, you do one solid piece of work. 3 nights a week, you cook something. Instead of ordering food, before sleep, you read 10 pages. Some days, you fail. One Wednesday, you scroll for an hour and a half, for absolutely no good reason. Saturday morning, you sleep until 10. Fine. Nobody is watching. There is no image to maintain. You just begin again. And after a while, something changes. The habits begin to feel like they belong to you, not to the version of you that other people are watching, to you. That difference seems small, but it matters. Because now, you begin discovering what you actually want when nobody is rewarding you for wanting it. Something strange happens. When too much of life becomes public, you begin experiencing yourself from the outside. You're having dinner with friends, and part of you is actually having dinner, but another part is watching the scene. This is nice. We should get a picture. The lighting is good. Everyone looks happy. You travel somewhere beautiful. You're standing in front of a landscape that took millions of years to form, and somehow, your first concern becomes finding the right angle. I'm not against photographs. I take them too. The problem is more subtle than that. At some point, the imagined version of your life can become more important than the life itself. You stop asking, am I enjoying this? And begin asking, does this look enjoyable? You stop asking, do I actually want this career? And start asking, does this career look successful? You stop asking, do I like the person I'm becoming? And begin wondering whether other people are impressed by that person. That is an exhausting way to live, because once you begin seeing yourself through everyone else's eyes, you never really get to rest. Here's our channel's perspective. I don't think wise people necessarily avoid attention. I think they're simply more careful about what attention does to them. There are times when visibility is useful. If you make art, people have to find it. If you run a business, customers need to know you exist. If you teach, someone has to listen. If you lead, there are moments when you need to stand up and speak clearly. There is nothing automatically noble about being unknown. A person can hide from the world and still think about themselves all day. So for me, the more useful question is not, should I be visible? It is this. If nobody was impressed by this, would I still want it? Think about that. Would you still exercise? If nobody ever saw the result, would you still read the book? If you could never mention it, would you still help that person? If the story could never be told, would you still want the job? If the title sounded ordinary, would you still hold that opinion? If nobody around you approved of it, you don't need a perfect answer. In fact, you probably won't have one. Just notice where you hesitate, because that hesitation often shows you where your motives are mixed, and motives are usually mixed. We're human. We want the thing itself, and we also want to be admired for wanting the thing. The goal isn't to become pure. It's just to notice which part is driving. Some people walk into a room and immediately, without even realizing it, begin asking, where do I fit here? Do these people respect me? Am I impressive enough? Does anyone notice me? Other people seem to enter the room with a different question. What's happening here? What does this situation need? That second person is often easier to be around. They listen. They don't need to top every story. They can let someone else be funny. They can let somebody else know more. They don't turn every disagreement into a test of their intelligence. This is not self-erasure. You don't have to disappear. You simply stop dragging yourself into the center of every experience. And when you do that, you start noticing things you were too busy performing to notice before. Other people become more interesting. Silence becomes less uncomfortable. Mistakes become survivable. You can say, I was wrong. You can say, I don't know. And sometimes, you can simply say nothing. These are small freedoms, but added together, they create a very different kind of life. We hear the phrase all the time, leave your mark on the world. I understand why. Nobody wants to believe their life meant nothing, but perhaps meaning and visibility are not the same thing. Think about some of the people who quietly shaped your life. A teacher whose name you haven't thought about in 15 years. A relative who made home feel safe. A co-worker who helped you when you were new and embarrassed. A stranger who said something kind on a terrible afternoon, then probably forgot about the whole thing before dinner. They may never know what they changed. A lot of what matters in life happens like that, quietly, without a record. A child grows up with a little more confidence because someone listened to them seriously. A marriage survives because one person decided not to win an argument. A workplace becomes easier because someone fixes problems without turning every solution into a performance. A friend survives a terrible year because another person kept showing up. No audience, no monument, no applause. Still real. Maybe more real because of it. The Taoist sage isn't trying to become invisible for the sake of invisibility. He simply has less interest in putting his name on everything he touches. He does what needs doing. Then he moves on. There is something deeply relieving about that idea. You do not have to spend your whole life proving that your life is valuable. You don't have to turn every improvement into evidence. You don't need everybody to understand you. You don't need to win every room. Some things can remain yours. A habit, a good deed, a private ambition, a quiet morning, a piece of work that nobody fully understands yet. Let some things grow without digging them up every few days to show people the roots. This week, try one small experiment. Do one thing you're proud of and tell no one. Nothing dramatic. Maybe finish the work you've been avoiding. Maybe help someone. Maybe exercise. Maybe keep a promise to yourself that nobody else even knows you made. Then notice what happens. Notice whether part of you wants someone to know. Notice the little voice asking, but if no one sees it, does it count? You don't need to fight that voice. Just hear it. And maybe the answer is simpler than we've made it. Yes, it counts. It happened. You were there. And sometimes that is enough. So here's a question to carry with you. If nobody could ever know you did it, what is one thing you would still choose to do?